Welcome to Executives at the Edge, a podcast brought to you by MEF. I'm your host, Pascal Menezes. Join me as we explore thought-provoking perspectives from the leaders and changemakers who are propelling enterprise digital transformation forward. Today, I'm so excited to have Luis Fiallo, VP of China Telecom Americas, and really great episode about how China Telecom Americas is participating in the Americas and working with all the companies to create that communication channel between the continent of America and China. So with that, I'd like to welcome Luis Fiallo. And Luis, please tell us a little about yourself and a little about China Telecom Americas. That'd be really appreciated.
Well, first of all, Pascal, thank you for having me on today. And, we've always admired the work that the MEF has done. So we're excited to be on, especially me. So for me, I'm a 25 years plus telecom executive. I've worked for a lot of American companies as well as other international companies, but I spent the majority of my career at China Telecom and what's called China Telecom Americas, which is the international subsidiary of China Telecom Corporation, and we're responsible for the entire Americas region. And it's exciting for me because I joined the company when China was just going abroad. It was opening up its market. They were building, infrastructure, and one of the companies that was doing so is China Telecom, which today is one of the, I think, top 10 in the world, telecom operators. And, when we started off, China Telecom started off, we had the U.S. Obviously, the U.S. is a good market, but it's also a very competitive market. So as China was emerging into the global telecom space, where China Telecom was, we were fortunate enough to learn a lot from the U.S. market, and we continue to expand. Now we have operations in 45 countries. In the Americas region, we have 3 subsidiaries, one in Canada, one in the U.S., and one in Brazil. And we've been serving multinational customers as well as carrier customers. And we've done a little bit on the consumer side through our MVNO initiatives that we've done in the past. And we still have operations up in Canada for. So for us, what the best way to describe us, we're an international broadband provider that's sort of migrating and pivoting a little bit, being more of an overlay operator as opposed to being a complete underlay and overlay. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, what that means later. But for us, we've been here for, last year we celebrated year 20 of operations in the U.S., so we're very proud of the accomplishments we've had.
Well, thank you, Luis. I never knew that about China Telecom. I always think about China Telecom as massive in China, and I never realized that they had a division, China Telecom Americas. So that's pretty enlightening. So tell us, Luis, what can telecom providers do to address changing connectivity needs or enhance cross-regional connectivity while still staying compliant to local policy? As you know, this has become a huge deal about local policy. So if you can enlighten our listeners, that'd be really important.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about what's happening, right? So, in my view, the world of digital transformation is something that began prior to the pandemic, but it was accelerated during the pandemic. And the digital transformation is where not only enterprise users, everybody's decided to make a commitment to move things into a way of being able to communicate electronically. And we had to do that during the pandemic, and we accelerated those investments. But governments also got behind it. And actually, they started talking about this. You can point to certain data points like Osaka, Japan, when the G20 got together, and they were discussing, digital transformation. And they were talking about how we're going to regulate it, how we're going to govern it. So this has been a big push throughout. And then you got the technology piece. You have things like 5G, AI, IoT, M2M, machine to machine. and edge computing, coupled with cloud computing and traditional telecommunications and data center services. So, as what I've seen is that what all this has done is brought in new opportunities to manage data and manage the integration of this information, which has now created new regulations, rules, policies that governments are looking at. But the challenge we have as an industry, as a communication service provider in our industry, is that the governments all not agree on how these things and rules are going to be deployed. And some governments are further ahead, while some governments are still trying to come up with the right combination of rules and regulations. But at the very beginning, to answer your question, we've always strived to be localized and follow local laws and regulations. We've always done that. And then the second thing is we tried to be accommodating because many of our customers are, the Fortune 500. And what we're doing for them is building a communication bridge between really two regions of the world, and in certain cases, even around the world. So what they want to do is they want to be compliant. A lot of new technologies being added. So some of the rules are not clear about that. But there is issues around data sovereignty, data control, data security. And, for the first time, I think our industry, has to have a say in that because it impacts us. It impacts us, how we operate and how we manage that information.
Okay, Paul, thank you, Louis. I have a question though. So if you are in Americas, the total Americas, North America, does that include LATAM, the Americas, South America?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And do you retail out in these areas services as China Telecom, or mainly you provide the ability to extend the China footprint of retailing back into the Americas to then pick up local loops from all various parties?
Yeah. So to answer your specific question, in Latin America, we have a subsidiary called China Telecom Brazil. And in there, we started off as an transit provider for ISPs. Brazil is 9,000 ISPs and growing, steadily, right? But they need connectivity around the country and to the world. So we started in 2015 as a transit provider. We've started to migrate to support more Chinese enterprises that enter into Brazil. And we see there's close to about 300 Chinese companies that have gone into Brazil. So what we do is try to help them with their communications needs as they go into the country. And if you're asking me, do we retail to them, the services that we buy from other local providers. And we do the same thing for Brazilian companies that are going to China and Asia. There's right now a list of about 85 to 100 different Brazilian companies that have operations in China today. So they need communications. So that's what we focus on. And on that side of the equation, we not only sell or get them to China, but using our parent company's resources in domestic China mainland, we actually help them build out their communications infrastructure for whatever it is. If it's retail, if it's hotels, manufacturing, whatever they need, we build it through our affiliate companies and using their resources, so they don't have to worry about buying it over there in China.
Okay, so I get it. So what you're saying is there's a lot of business going between the Americas and China for various things, from manufacturing to all kinds of areas. And there needs a communication aspects to that. And that's really what China Telecom Americas really facilitate. Do I have that right?
You got it.
Okay,
perfect.
Now, it helps me make sense. So look, what are the unique connectivity requirements and preferences of different industries in the U.S., Asia, and LATAM regions, and how are they best addressed?
So I think the U.S., Asia, and LATAM regions are pretty consistent as to what they're aspiring to reach. If you think about the communication services industry, when I first started, everything was to try to get information from one location to the other location, where the computing powers were at the edges. But the edges were at a corporation, right? Or as with the advent of cloud technology, SD-WAN, and other technologies, the intelligence and the computing power has gone from being at the edge at the enterprise level into the cloud. And the cloud resides inside of a network. So what we see now is that the requirements are less of a need to go to connect one location to another office, right? Or connect them. What it is to connect them to a cloud platform. There's several prominent cloud providers. And then we have our own cloud platform as well that complements those needs. And then we also see the need in enterprises in particular that they want to see is better control and better usage of their data traffic. And we do that through SD-WAN services today. Okay, so we've given them power to be able to order services more rapidly, quickly, and deliver them things and use it when they need it. So it's changed. It's changed a lot. And I see those necessities from a global perspective, all similar between US, Asia, and LATAM. In Latin America in particular, you're starting to see, we've seen a boom of data center developments. You're starting to see more cloud services being deployed domestically in those countries. And that gets us to the next point, which is really there's decisions companies are going through. And it's really, where do you want to fit? Do you want to fit in the underlay where you're building an infrastructure, you're spending, billions of dollars to connect a lot of different people together and you're localized? Or do you want to fit in the overlay where companies like China Telecom Americas, our strength is not in building in the underlay. And we've never done it. We've actually built what's called an aggregation network. So we have POPs, but those POPs are, carrier hotels, and we buy from other, tier one operators or other companies, the local loops to connect to our POPs. And then we connect into our international gateways that goes on our global backbone and traverses around the world as it needs to. And what we've done is we've made a decision to focus exclusively on the overlay network, so we can actually provide services to what we see as the future, which is really customers that want to buy, things in the cloud, in the network. And for us, we made those kind of commitments. We started that process about 2 years ago. We still have a long way to go, but we recently announced, for example, our eCloud services in Brazil that we're planning to offer to Brazilian operators as well as Brazilian enterprises. And in our case, our value is that we can help you get, using our underlay that we've invested, we can get you better connectivity into the China market for cloud services. And it solves some of the problems of latency. It solves some of the problems of, having to bounce between different cloud providers and stuff. So we feel that we have a better opportunity to serve those kind of customers going forward. And that's where we're making our investments.
So, Louis, you mentioned overlay. Are you talking SD-WAN technology specifically, or
Yes.
other areas of overlay?
No, when I think of overlay, I think of SD-WAN technologies. I also would look at things we would even consider internet to be sort of an overlay network. Anything, not to get into the technical discussion, but level 3 and above, an OSI model, we would look at and say that that's where we are building. So what we're not going to do is we're not going to build, lay fiber. We're not going to buy spectrum. We are just providing services that will enable these companies to be able to communicate and using somebody else's underlay with their cable systems and everything else. But the only exception being in the Philippines, where we're one of the 3 wireless providers in the Philippines today. But that was a special project that was emerged into making us a really big player there.
Okay, got it. So one of the things I wanted to ask you was, so what measures can be taken to address network security and protect user data?
So, that's a great question. Telecom companies have always been about hardening their network, right? Nothing comes in. You have to be sort of whitelisted to get in and everything else. But with the advent of new technologies or new applications, everything from IoT devices and everything else, you sort of have to partition. And what we've taken an approach where we want to be able to take all these individual platforms that a customer wants, and we sort of partition and slice it out all using our network to be able to just offer it to them. So, for example, and I'll use IoT again as an example. So, today our IoT devices that we support are primarily in China, but in China, what we do is we have a private cloud that parallels the IoT network. Okay. And that private cloud is where you run your applications and you actually get your data analytics from, you get all your information, but it's talking to the devices that are IoT based. Okay. And the IoT devices are dependent on the internet and the internet network that we run. So all the security that you would use to manage an internet operations or network is embedded there. Plus, we actually have a sort of a sliced off individual enterprise-focused cloud service that we actually tie to you so you can have the communication back and forth and you have availability to it. That's the first thing we've done for the security on the network side. The second thing, we've participated starting in, I think it was 2019, in Manners, which is the Internet Society's way of sort of coming up with requirements to be able to sort of make sure the data you're passing is clean and efficient and correct. So we were the first tier 1 operator with our parent company to start be compliant on Manners policies. And, we've seen, eliminations for the most part of, spoofing and other things that people would use a carrier's network for to conduct. And we've seen a lot of other operators join too now. So, we're pretty happy and proud of that accomplishment. And then the other component of all this is that we've invested a lot in our cybersecurity infrastructure. And when I talk about cybersecurity infrastructure, is making sure that we have a way to know what's happening inside of our company. Okay. What resources are made available to what individuals, making sure everything. So the 3 components, okay. One is how we architect the network to be able to transfer information and make it available and open to support a lot of different things that are coming into the network. The second one is the information we share between us and other operators is clean. And then the third is making sure our back office operations are well managed and secured. So those are the kind of investments we've made. And, for a company of China Telecom Americas size, it's been pretty sizable investments that we've taken to really, for the benefit of our customers.
So it was interesting when you said cybersecurity. So what I'm hearing to all of our, members and to all that I talk to, cybersecurity, now SASE has become a huge term and part of the overlay, and adding network connectivity with cybersecurity has become the norm, becoming the norm. And that's how, customers want to buy, at least maybe large enterprise, maybe multinationals want to buy it separately. But does China Telecom Americas have a cybersecurity service offering? Or do you just secure your own network?
We have, there's a big term called zero trust networks. Okay. And what, in our view, my view, it's more of making sure that everything is clear and that only the things that are supposed to be touching your information is touching your information. That essentially what I described to you earlier, that's what we've done. Okay. Have it branded it under Zero Trust Networks or SASE? No. Do we offer security services? Absolutely. We partner, not only do we do some of it internally ourselves, but we also partner with some very large, cybersecurity companies around the world. to help us make sure and help us do it, because you can't do it all yourself. And we do believe in having a secure operations center that will help us monitor that, which is different from the knock of a global operator. It's different from the knock of a local provider. So it takes a lot of synchronization, a lot of information that has to go between these entities. And it's not as easy because, as you probably know already, the information and what is being done and each step of the process throughout the communications channel, it differs and has different stakeholders. And so we need to, a lot of our international traffic, we use third-party partners. They don't necessarily adhere to all our standards. And, so we have to make sure the information we get is the way we want it and everything else. So it's a complicated process that not only China Telecom is pursuing and developing, because as we talked earlier, everything is moving to its cloud. All the resources are in the network. So you have to, an enterprise is only going to continue to buy in that capacity if they trust what's inside.
I'm not sure we would have time for anything more, but I do want to thank you for your time, and this has been really enlightening, and I'm sure for our listeners too. So thank you, Louis.
Thank you, Pascal, and thank you for having me.